Nobody moves when it ends. That is the thing nobody prepares you for. The training camps, the preparation meetings, the dietary routines, the bullpen sessions at midnight, all of it builds toward a single moment. And when that moment arrives and it goes the wrong way, the body simply stops. The legs forget how to walk. The hands forget what they were holding. The eyes stay fixed on a scoreboard that is no longer changing. Samurai Japan was defeated. Not in a quiet, forgettable way. Not in the kind of loss that fades within a news cycle. This was the WBC, the tournament that carries the full emotional weight of national pride, generational expectation, and the kind of pressure that no regular season game can replicate. This was the stage where Shohei Ohtani had previously stood at the top of the world, where the nation had watched with collective breath held, where every at-bat and every pitch carried the feeling of something larger than baseball. And it ended in defeat. But what happened inside the walls of that clubhouse after the final out, what was said between teammates, what emotions broke through surfaces that professional athletes spend careers learning to control, that is the story that matters. That is the part the scoreboard cannot show you. Seiya Suzuki told that story to the American media. And he couldn't get through it without tears. Before we get to what Ohtani said, we need to understand what Seiya Suzuki was carrying when he heard it. Suzuki had come into this WBC with everything to prove. Playing for the Chicago Cubs in MLB, he had spent recent seasons building his reputation outside Japan, proving that his talent translated, that the instincts and discipline he had developed over years in NPB were not just domestic achievements but genuinely world-class qualities. Representing Samurai Japan was not just an honor. It was a statement. A chance to stand alongside Ohtani and Yamamoto on the biggest international stage in the sport and show the world exactly who Seiya Suzuki was. Then the injury came. Mid-game, in a moment that required no dramatic collision or catastrophic event, just the body failing at the worst possible time, Suzuki was forced out. Substituted. Removed from the field during a WBC game wearing the Samurai Japan uniform, unable to continue, watching the remainder of the contest from a place that felt impossibly far from where he needed to be. For a professional athlete, few experiences carry that particular kind of pain. It is not the physical pain of the injury itself. Athletes are trained to manage that, to compartmentalize it, to push it aside. It is the psychological weight of watching your teammates fight a battle you trained months to fight alongside them, and being unable to do anything except watch. Suzuki watched. And somewhere in those moments, before the final result had been decided, before the scoreboard had delivered its verdict, Ohtani came to find him. Suzuki recounted the moment carefully, the way people do when they are trying to be accurate about something that hit them deeply. Ohtani didn't arrive with a speech. He didn't come with the kind of prepared, polished words that athletes sometimes offer in difficult moments, the hollow reassurances, the generic encouragements that sound right but mean nothing. He came simply. Directly. The way someone comes when they genuinely mean what they are about to say. What Ohtani told him, Suzuki revealed to the American media, was about more than the injury. It was about Suzuki's presence on this team, what he had brought to the preparation, to the atmosphere of the clubhouse, to the standard of effort that had been set in training camp before a single competitive game was played. Ohtani told him that none of that disappeared because of the substitution. That the contribution was real regardless of how many innings he completed. Suzuki, recounting this to reporters, couldn't hold it together. The tears came not because the words were extraordinary in their complexity, they weren't. They came because of who said them and when. Because Ohtani, in the middle of his own preparation and focus, had noticed. Had taken the time. Had walked across the clubhouse specifically to make sure that Suzuki understood he was not invisible in this moment. For someone sitting in the pain of an unwanted substitution, during a WBC tournament, representing your country, that kind of specific, personal attention from the teammate everyone looks to means more than any tactical or strategic conversation ever could. I was really moved, Suzuki told reporters, his voice breaking as he tried to continue. He didn't have to do that. That last sentence says everything. He didn't have to. That is precisely why it mattered. This is not the first time a teammate has broken down while describing a quiet moment with Ohtani. There is a pattern, visible to anyone who pays attention across multiple teammates, multiple seasons, multiple contexts, of Ohtani showing up in the moments that don't make highlight reels. Not the walk-off home runs. Not the dominant pitching performances that fill broadcast segments. But the moments in between. The ones that happen in corridors and cafeterias and training rooms and clubhouses after the cameras have stopped rolling. Former teammates have spoken about his diet, the obsessive precision with which he manages nutrition, the rice and eggs and broccoli that never vary regardless of what those around him are eating. Younger players have talked about trying to imitate his routines and failing within days, unable to sustain the level of discipline that Ohtani maintains without visible effort or complaint. But the dietary discipline and the training routines, as impressive as they are not actually the most remarkable thing. The most remarkable thing is that someone carrying that level of personal pressure, the expectations of an entire nation, the weight of being the most watched baseball player on the planet, consistently finds space to notice what the person next to him is going through. That is not a skill that develops through training camp. It is not something a conditioning coach can build into a schedule. It is character. Genuine, consistent, unremarkable to him character that those around him experience as something extraordinary. Suzuki experienced it in that moment after his substitution. And he cried telling the world about it. If Suzuki expressed his pain through tears, Yoshinobu Yamamoto expressed his through something quieter and in some ways more unsettling. Disappointment. Not the explosive, emotional disappointment of someone who expected everything and received nothing. But the deep, considered disappointment of someone who had prepared at the absolute highest level, who had given everything the preparation required, and who still found himself standing on the wrong side of the result. Yamamoto, now pitching for the Los Angeles Dodgers alongside Ohtani, carried into this WBC the full weight of his own elevated expectations. He had established himself as one of the best pitchers in the world. His preparation is meticulous. His commitment to every detail of his craft is visible to anyone who has spent time watching him work. He spoke after the defeat with the careful, measured tone of someone still processing something that doesn't fully make sense yet. He spoke of the difficulty of accepting a result that doesn't reflect the preparation behind it. Of the particular frustration of knowing that everything that could be controlled was controlled, and still coming up short. Of sitting with a loss that cannot be explained away by pointing to a lack of effort or focus or commitment. It's incredibly disappointing, Yamamoto said. We prepared. We were ready. This result is hard to accept. There were no tears from Yamamoto. That is not his way. But the disappointment in his words carried its own weight, the kind that comes from someone who holds themselves to a standard so high that falling short of it, regardless of the reason, leaves a mark that takes time to fade. He and Ohtani have built something at the Dodgers, a professional relationship that has evolved into genuine mutual respect between two people who understand, perhaps better than anyone, what it costs to perform at the level they both demand of themselves. Watching that shared preparation fail to produce the result they chased at the WBC was a particular kind of painful for Yamamoto. He didn't hide it. He simply carried it with the same composure he carries everything else. There is something that only defeat can show you about a person. Victory is easy to wear. It fits everyone. It requires nothing complicated from the humans underneath it. When things go right, the smiles are genuine and the celebrations are deserved, and there is no particular test of character being administered. Defeat is different. Defeat asks questions. It asks what you say to the teammate who got injured and couldn't finish the game. It asks whether you stay composed when the result goes against everything you worked for. It asks whether you carry your disappointment with honesty or hide it behind performance. Suzuki's tears answered one of those questions. He carried his emotion honestly. He sat in front of American media, reporters who did not share his cultural context, who were not invested in his personal journey the way Japanese audiences were, and he told the truth about what happened in that clubhouse. He told them that Ohtani came to find him. That the words meant something he wasn't prepared for. That he was moved in a way he couldn't control. He was moved in a way he couldn't control. That kind of honesty requires its own form of courage. Yamamoto answered differently but just as honestly. No performance of resilience. No forced optimism about next time. Simply the plain, undecorated truth that the result was hard to accept and the disappointment was real. And Ohtani, who generated both of these moments simply by being who he is, continued doing what he always does. Noticed what was happening around him. Responded to it. Said what needed to be said to the person who needed to hear it. Without announcement. Without cameras. Without any apparent awareness that what he was doing was worth remarking on. The WBC result will be recorded and filed away into the official history of the tournament. Samurai Japan lost. The scoreboard is permanent. But the moments that happened inside that clubhouse, the conversation Ohtani had with Suzuki, the tears that came weeks later when Suzuki found the words to describe it, the quiet devastation in Yamamoto's careful sentences, these are not filed away. These are the things that travel with people. That surface in interviews years from now. That get passed down to younger players who were not there but who will be told about it by someone who was. Because this is how the real legacy of a tournament like the WBC gets built. Not through trophies. Not through statistics. Through the moments between the moments. Through what people chose to do when the cameras were off and the result had already been decided and there was nothing left to perform for. Ohtani chose to cross the room. Suzuki chose to tell the truth about it. Yamamoto chose to sit with his disappointment honestly rather than dress it up in something more comfortable. These are small choices. They happen in minutes. They leave no visible mark on any official record anywhere. And yet they are, without question, the most important things that happened in that clubhouse on the night Samurai Japan was defeated. Seiya Suzuki wiped his eyes and finished the interview. Yamamoto returned to Dodgers preparation with the quiet intensity that defines everything he does. And Ohtani, as always, moved forward, carrying the loss the same way he carries everything else. Without complaint. Without excuse. Ready for whatever comes next.